The sound of a distant bell echoed through the wind, a symbol of the long-awaited event that was about to unfold. In a quiet neighborhood nestled within the bustling city, there stood an old two-story house, its walls steeped in secrets, its windows witnessing more than just the passing of time. The house had always been a mystery to those who lived around it. The townspeople often whispered about strange occurrences, yet no one could ever quite pinpoint what had truly happened. The house, with its faded elegance and age-worn charm, stood as a silent witness to a past long buried. On the evening of an unusually warm autumn day, a figure approached the house, a young woman, her silhouette outlined against the setting sun. Her name was Isla, a newcomer to the city, unaware of the shadow that loomed over the place she had chosen to make her home. Isla had recently moved to the city in search of new beginnings. She had been offered a job at a prestigious marketing firm, and the apartment she had found seemed perfect for starting over. But something about the house, about the energy it emanated, made her uneasy. As she walked up the creaky steps to the front door, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She reached for the doorknob, but before she could turn it, the door swung open with an unsettling squeak, revealing a middle-aged man with a stern face and dark, tired eyes. His name was Ethan, and he was the landlord. "Welcome," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "I assume you're Isla. We've been expecting you." Isla nodded, offering a small smile as she stepped inside. The house smelled musty, as though it hadn't been properly aired out in years. The wooden floors creaked beneath her feet, and the faint sound of a clock ticking echoed through the silence. "You must be wondering about the place," Ethan continued, closing the door behind her. "It's been empty for some time, but it has its charm. You'll find that it's special." Isla raised an eyebrow, but before she could respond, Ethan quickly added, "Don't mind the old place. It just has a few quirks. Nothing to worry about." As Isla followed him through the dimly lit hallways, her eyes caught sight of something that made her pause. A painting of a woman, hung crookedly on the wall. Her face was obscured by shadows, but Isla could make out the haunting, hollow eyes staring back at her. She couldn't shake the feeling that the eyes followed her every move, even as she turned away. "That's Eleanor," Ethan said, noticing her gaze. "She was the last tenant. Lovely woman, really. Unfortunately, well, she didn't last long. We had to move her out a few months ago." Isla turned to him, confusion written on her face. "What do you mean, she didn't last long?" Ethan's expression darkened for a moment, before he quickly masked it with a forced smile. "Just a little accident. She fell ill, that's all. Happens more often than you'd think with these old houses." He ushered her into the living room, where dust hung thick in the air. Isla set her suitcase down with a quiet thud, still unsettled by the strange encounter. "I'm sure I'll get used to it," she said, trying to push the nagging feeling from her mind. "Is there anything I should know about the house?" Ethan's face softened, and for a brief moment, his eyes seemed to wander, as if lost in some distant memory. "There's nothing to worry about. Just make sure you lock the doors at night, and don't go into the basement." Isla blinked, startled by the sudden, cryptic warning. "The basement?" "Yes," Ethan replied, his voice taking on a strange, almost fearful tone. "Just avoid it? I'd hate to see anyone get too curious about what's down there." Before Isla could ask another question, Ethan quickly changed the subject. "Anyway, feel free to explore. I'll leave you to settle in. If you need anything, you know where to find me." He gave her a curt nod and left, closing the door behind him. Isla was left alone in the silence of the house, the weight of Ethan's words lingering in the air. She let out a deep breath, shaking off the eerie feeling that had settled in her chest. "It's just an old house," she muttered to herself. "Nothing to be afraid of." But as the night descended and the wind howled outside, Isla couldn't help but feel a strange sensation creeping over her. The house felt alive, almost as if it were breathing, its walls closing in on her, whispering secrets she wasn't meant to hear. Later that evening, as Isla unpacked her things, she found a peculiar journal tucked away in the back of a closet. Its leather cover was worn, and the pages were yellowed with age. She opened it, skimming through the faded words written in a shaky hand. The journal seemed to belong to Eleanor, the previous tenant. The entries were strange, filled with ramblings about voices in the walls, shadows that moved on their own, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. The final entry sent a chill down Isla's spine. "I can hear them. They're in the basement. They want me to join them. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. If anyone finds this, don't go down there. Please, don't go down." Isla slammed the journal shut, her heart racing. What had she gotten herself into? Was the house really haunted? Or was it just the ramblings of someone who had lost their mind? She stood up, walking towards the window and staring out into the darkened streets below. The sound of the wind picked up again, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw a shadow move across the yard. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she turned away from the window. She could no longer ignore the feeling that something was terribly wrong with this house. Something dark, something evil. And as she walked towards the kitchen, she heard it, the faintest whisper from the shadows. "Welcome home." The night seemed to stretch on forever as Isla lay awake in bed, staring up at the cracked ceiling. The house creaked and groaned with the wind, each sound louder than the last. She tried to shake off the feeling that something was wrong. "It's just an old house," she whispered to herself, "just an old house with some quirks. Nothing to be afraid of." But as the hours dragged by, sleep evaded her. Her mind raced with the memories of the journal and Ethan's unsettling warning. She couldn't help but feel the weight of the house pressing down on her, suffocating her with its secrets. She turned over and glanced at the clock. It was almost 2 a.m. The house was still, but the silence felt thick, as though it was waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, a faint sound pierced the quiet, a soft scratching noise coming from the floorboards beneath her. It was almost imperceptible, but it was there. Isla held her breath, her pulse quickening. A rat, maybe, she thought, but the sound didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, as if something or someone was trying to break through the floor. She sat up, her heart pounding in her chest. "What the hell is that?" she whispered. The scratching continued, and then, to her horror, it was followed by a soft, unmistakable whisper, a voice barely audible, but clear enough to make her blood run cold. "Help me." Isla froze. Her eyes darted around the room, but the darkness offered no answers. "No, no, no," she whispered, shaking her head. It must have been her imagination. She must have been hearing things. But the voice came again, this time clearer, closer, almost desperate. "Help me. It's so cold. Help me get out." The voice sounded like a woman's, fragile, trembling. Isla's skin prickled with fear as she swung her legs off the bed, her feet touching the cold wooden floor. She crept slowly toward the door, her heart racing. The whispering grew louder, and now she could hear faint footsteps, like someone or something was moving just beneath the floor. Isla's hand hovered over the doorknob, her breath shallow. Should she leave the room? Should she call for help? But Ethan had warned her about the basement. "Don't go down there," he had said. "Don't go into the basement." She could feel the weight of those words bearing down on her. But then, the scratching grew louder, closer. The floorboards beneath her feet seemed to tremble as though something was trying to claw its way up to the surface. With a sense of dread gnawing at her, Isla took a deep breath and made her decision. She had to know what was going on. She had to find out the truth. She grabbed her phone and dialed Ethan's number. He picked up on the second ring. "Hello." Ethan's voice was groggy, and Isla could hear the sound of rustling sheets. "Ethan," Isla said, her voice shaky. "There's something in the house. I'm hearing noises, scratching, whispering. Is there someone here? Is this place haunted?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was quieter, more serious than before. "Isla, you don't understand. This house, it's not just old. It's cursed. You need to leave. You need to get out of there before it's too late." Isla's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Cursed? What's going on in this house, Ethan?" "Eleanor," Ethan said, his voice trembling now. The last tenant. She went down into the basement one night, and she never came back. We thought she'd just left, but now I'm not so sure. I've heard things, too. Things that can't be explained. Isla felt a cold chill spread through her body. So what happened to her? Why haven't you told me this? I didn't want to scare you, Ethan admitted. But now it's happening again. The whispers, the voices, the scratching. It's all a warning. The house doesn't want anyone to stay. It's hungry for souls, Isla. It will take you if you stay too long. Isla's hand shook as she gripped the phone, her thoughts racing. The voice she had heard, was it Eleanor? Was it the spirit of the previous tenant, trapped in the house? And the basement? What had happened down there? She didn't have time to think it over. The whispering had grown louder, more frantic now, and it was coming from below her feet. The floor was shaking as though something beneath was moving closer to the surface. Without another word, Isla hung up the phone and rushed toward the door. She could hear Ethan's voice shouting her name through the receiver, but she didn't stop. The door slammed open, and she sprinted down the hall toward the staircase. At the foot of the stairs, she hesitated. The basement door was just ahead, its wood warped and worn. She could feel the weight of it pulling her in, as if it were calling to her, inviting her to uncover its dark secret. The whispers were deafening now, and the scratching was so loud it felt as though the house itself was alive, breathing beneath her feet. Isla took a step forward, then another, until she stood in front of the basement door. The air around her seemed to grow colder, thicker with an unnatural chill. The whispers were coming from behind the door now, and she could hear them clearer than ever before. "Help me, Isla. I'm here. You're not alone. Come down. Come down and join me." Isla reached out with trembling hands, grabbing the handle of the door. She could feel her heart racing in her chest, the fear and the curiosity battling within her. She had to know what was in the basement. She had to know what had happened to Eleanor. She turned the handle, and the door creaked open with a terrible groan. The darkness beyond the door swallowed her whole. She stepped into the cold, damp air, and the door slammed shut behind her, plunging her into blackness. Isla's heart hammered in her chest as she stood at the foot of the stairs, her hand resting on the cold, iron railing. The darkness of the basement was almost suffocating, the air thick with a musty, damp scent that seemed to invade her lungs with every breath. She could still hear the whispers from behind the basement door, the desperate, pleading voice of Eleanor that seemed to grow louder with every passing second. "Come down, Isla. It's so cold. I'm waiting. Help me." The voice was faint, but there was something hauntingly familiar about it, something that made Isla's blood run cold. Was it Eleanor? Or was it something else? She swallowed hard and tried to steady her breathing, her mind racing as she wrestled with the fear gnawing at her. She took another step forward, her feet feeling heavier with each movement, as if the house itself was pulling her deeper into its grip. The basement door loomed before her like a dark mouth waiting to swallow her whole. She reached for the handle again, her fingers trembling. With a creak that seemed to echo in the silence, the door swung open. The basement was darker than she had imagined. The only light came from a flickering bulb hanging from the ceiling, casting long shadows across the stone floor. The air was thick with the smell of earth and decay, and the temperature dropped as she descended the narrow, wooden steps. It was as if the house was closing in around her, every creak and groan of the floorboards amplifying the eerie silence. Isla felt the weight of the house on her chest, the sense that something ancient and malevolent was watching her every move. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she noticed the floor was covered in a thin layer of dust, and there were strange markings etched into the stone walls, symbols that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. She took a step forward, the floor creaking under her weight. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for any signs of what might be hidden down here. But there was nothing, just old furniture, boxes covered in sheets, and the lingering scent of something foul. And then, she saw it. In the far corner of the room, there was a large, wooden chest. It looked old, ancient, even, and it was the only thing in the basement that seemed out of place. The rest of the room was cluttered with discarded items, but the chest, it stood as if it had been waiting for her. She didn't know why, but she felt an overwhelming compulsion to approach it. Her legs moved before she could stop them, and she found herself standing in front of the chest, her fingers hovering over the rusted lock. The whispers grew louder. "Open it. Open the chest." Isla's breath hitched as she reached down and fumbled with the lock. The rusted metal was stiff, but with a forceful twist, it gave way, and the lock fell open with a loud snap. She lifted the lid slowly, her hands trembling, her heart in her throat. The air seemed to grow even colder as she peered into the chest. Inside, there was nothing but darkness. But as her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she could make out the faint outline of something long and twisted, almost like a rope, coiled at the bottom of the chest. Her pulse quickened as she reached inside, her fingers brushing against the cold surface. Whatever it was, it felt unnatural, like it was made of something other than flesh, something ancient and alive. Suddenly, the chest slammed shut with a deafening bang, causing Isla to stumble backward in shock. She gasped for air, her heart racing, and for a moment, everything was still. The basement was silent once more, the air thick with an oppressive weight. And then, the whispers returned. "You shouldn't have opened it, Isla. Now, you're one of us." The voice was louder now, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The walls of the basement began to close in on her, the shadows lengthening and twisting like living creatures. Isla's mind was spinning as she turned to run, but the staircase was gone. The door at the top of the basement stairs had vanished, leaving her trapped in the dark with whatever was lurking in the shadows. She turned in circles, her breath shallow, panic rising in her chest. There was nowhere to run, no way out. The shadows crept closer, and the temperature dropped to an unbearable chill. She could hear the whispers again, but this time, they were different. They weren't just voices, but words that were full of malice. You are here now. You are ours. Suddenly, the darkness shifted, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Eleanor, her face pale and twisted, her eyes hollow and empty. She was standing in the center of the room, her long, dark hair falling over her face as she raised her hand toward Isla. You should have stayed away, Isla. Now you will never leave. Isla's breath caught in her throat as she stumbled back, her heart hammering in her chest. She turned, desperately searching for an exit, but the walls were closing in on her, the shadows thickening and swirling like a living nightmare. The air around her was suffocating, and the whispers became deafening, until it felt like her mind was going to implode. She felt hands, cold and clammy, wrap around her wrists, pulling her back toward the center of the room. Her screams echoed through the basement, but no one could hear her. No one would ever hear her again. Isla's vision blurred, her legs giving way beneath her as the darkness consumed her. As the last remnants of her consciousness slipped away, she heard one final whisper, cold and final. Welcome to the house, Isla. Welcome to your new home. Isla woke with a start, her body drenched in sweat, her heart racing. The darkness of the basement still haunted her, and she could feel the cold, suffocating grip of the house tightening around her chest. She sat up in bed, gasping for air, as if emerging from some deep, nightmarish fog. The whispers that had consumed her just moments before seemed to still echo in her mind, lingering like the faintest touch of ice on her skin. You are ours. The words reverberated in her mind, sending chills down her spine. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to shake off the remnants of the dream, or was it a vision? She didn't know anymore. What was real? What was in her mind, and what was this house doing to her? She slowly climbed out of bed, her legs weak beneath her. The house felt different now, heavier, as if it had changed overnight. The air in her room was thick, almost suffocating, and as she walked toward the window, she noticed something strange. The glass was fogged, despite the fact that there was no moisture in the air. She wiped at the fog with her sleeve, and when the mist cleared, she gasped in horror. A handprint. A cold, unmistakable handprint pressed against the window. It looked fresh, as if someone had just pressed their hand there, watching her from the outside. Isla stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat. She turned to the room, scanning every corner as if expecting the shadows to come to life. The house was silent, but the silence felt wrong, oppressive, like a looming threat waiting to strike. Get out. The voice, Eleanor's voice, whispered from the corner of the room. Isla whirled around, her heart in her throat. But there was no one there. The room remained empty, save for the dim light filtering through the foggy window. Isla backed away, shaking her head. It's just my imagination. It has to be. But deep down, she knew something was terribly wrong. She rushed out of her room, her bare feet slapping against the cold wood of the hallway. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the events that had unfolded since her arrival. The whispers. The shadows. The vision of Eleanor in the basement. She had to get out, she had to leave this house. But as she reached the front door, she hesitated. The feeling that something was watching her, waiting for her to make the wrong move, was overwhelming. She could almost hear the house breathing, as if it had a life of its own. With trembling hands, she grabbed the doorknob and twisted it. But the door wouldn't budge. It was locked, trapped. Panic surged through her as she pulled at the door, but it was no use. She could hear the whispers again, closer this time, almost as if they were right behind her. You can't leave. You belong here. Her pulse raced as she spun around, searching for any sign of the voice, but the hallway was empty. Only shadows seemed to stretch from the walls, their shapes twisting and shifting like dark tendrils. Then, she heard a loud thud from downstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of dragging. It was coming from the basement. Isla's heart leapt into her throat as she froze, her entire body tense with terror. No. She whispered, backing away from the door. She had already been warned. Ethan had told her to stay away from the basement. But the whispers were growing louder now, almost pleading with her to come down. Help me. The words echoed in her mind, like a call she couldn't ignore. She turned toward the stairs, her feet moving before she could stop them. Something was drawing her down there. Something she couldn't resist. It was as though the house was calling her, pulling her into its depths. With every step, the air grew colder, and the whispers turned to frantic pleading. You have to help us. It's not too late. Come down and free us. The basement door loomed ahead, its wood warped and aged, as though it had been untouched for decades. The lock on the door was gone, just like the last time she had seen it. With a shaking hand, she reached for the handle and turned it. The door creaked open with an eerie groan, and Isla's heart skipped a beat. The basement was darker than she had remembered. The faint light from above barely illuminated the space below. She could see nothing but shadows. But then, she heard it. A soft, unmistakable sound. The sound of footsteps. She wasn't alone. The shadows in the basement shifted, and Isla's breath caught in her throat as a figure slowly emerged from the darkness. It was Eleanor. Her pale face twisted in pain and anguish, her eyes wide with terror. Help me, Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. It's too late for me. But you can save them. Isla's stomach churned as she took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. She had heard the stories of how Eleanor had died, alone and afraid. She had been trapped in the house, just like Isla was now. but Isla couldn't save her. She couldn't even save herself. No. I can't. But Eleanor reached out to her, her fingers outstretched, her face desperate. You can. You have to stop him. He's the reason we're all here. He's the one who brought us into this hell. Isla's mind reeled. Who? Who are you talking about? The shadows in the basement shifted again, and Isla's eyes darted toward the corner. There, standing in the darkness, was a figure. His face was obscured by shadows, but she could feel his presence. His cold, malevolent presence. It's him, Eleanor's voice trembled. It's Ethan. He did this to us. He's the one who trapped us here. Isla's breath caught in her throat as realization crashed down on her. Ethan. The man who had rented her the house. The man who had warned her about the basement. He wasn't just the landlord. He was part of the curse. Isla's legs trembled as she stepped back, but the figure in the corner took a step forward. And then another. You can't escape, he growled. His voice was low, almost a growl, filled with an otherworldly anger. None of you ever escape. Isla turned and ran, her heart racing as she fled up the stairs. The sound of footsteps behind her, louder now, echoed through the house, and the walls seemed to close in around her. The door to the outside was no longer there. She had no escape. You belong here, the voice whispered again, the words like daggers in her mind. Isla stumbled to a stop, her body exhausted and shaking. She couldn't breathe. Her eyes darted around, looking for any way out, but there was nothing. The house was alive. It was consuming her. And then, she heard it. A soft whisper, barely audible, but unmistakable. It's too late. The walls closed in on her. And Isla screamed. Isla's scream echoed through the halls of the house, but it was swallowed by the darkness. Her legs felt weak as she backed away from the basement door, her mind a whirl of confusion and terror. Every breath she took felt like it could be her last, and yet, she couldn't move fast enough. The shadows around her stretched and twisted, as though they were alive, reaching for her, pulling her back into the house's grasp. She stumbled through the hallway, her hands brushing against the walls as she tried to steady herself. The house felt like it was closing in on her, the very walls pressing against her chest, suffocating her. She could still hear Ethan's voice, distant and cold, echoing in her mind. You can't escape. You belong to this house now. But she refused to believe it. She couldn't let it end like this. She had to escape. She had to survive. The front door was just ahead. But when she reached for the handle, it wouldn't budge. The door was locked. No. Isla cried out in frustration, her nails digging into the wood. The air around her grew colder, and the walls seemed to hum with the dark energy. She spun around, looking for any way out, but there was nothing. The windows were boarded up, and the house seemed to grow taller, its walls stretching to unimaginable heights. It was as if the very house was alive, and it was trapping her inside. "You can't leave. It's too late for that." The voice came again, this time louder, more insistent. It was coming from all around her, swirling through the air like 1,000 whispers, each one a thread in the tapestry of the house's dark, twisted soul. Isla's pulse raced. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice shaking. "What have you done?" From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Ethan. His face was pale, his eyes cold and hollow. There was no warmth in them, no humanity. He was a ghost, a shell of the man he had once been. His lips curled into a twisted smile as he approached her. "It's too late, Isla," he said softly. "You've already opened the door. You've already let us in." Isla recoiled in horror, her heart pounding in her chest. "Let you in?" she whispered, barely able to form the words. "What are you talking about?" Ethan's smile widened as he stepped closer, the shadows around him shifting like smoke. "This house," he said, his voice low and chilling, "is more than just a building. It's alive. It feeds on the souls of those who come here. And you. You were always meant to be part of it." Isla's breath hitched in her throat as the truth began to settle in. She had been drawn to this house, just like Eleanor before her. It wasn't just the job or the apartment, it was something darker, something that had lured her in from the start. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why me?" Ethan tilted his head, his eyes glinting with malice. "Because you were chosen. Just like the others. Eleanor, me, and now you. The house needs us, and we need it." Isla took a step back, shaking her head in disbelief. "No. No, this can't be happening. This can't be real." But Ethan's laughter echoed in the darkness, filling the room with an unnatural, hollow sound. "It's real, Isla. It's always been real." Before she could react, the walls around her began to shift, the floor groaning beneath her feet as if the house was alive, breathing, moving. The air grew colder, the shadows darker, and the whispers grew louder, until they drowned out everything else. Isla's heart raced as she spun around, looking for any way to escape. The house was closing in on her, the walls narrowing, the shadows growing long and menacing. She reached for the door again, but it was no use. The handle was cold to the touch, and no matter how hard she pulled, it wouldn't open. "Help!" she cried out, but her voice was swallowed by the house. She was alone, trapped in a nightmare of her own making. She had come too far to turn back now, and the house wasn't going to let her leave. Suddenly, a flash of light lit up the room, and a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, her face obscured by a veil of dark hair. It was Eleanor. "Isla," Eleanor whispered, her voice soft and pleading. "You have to stop him. You have to stop Ethan. He's the one who did this to us. He's the one who trapped us here." Isla's mind reeled. "Ethan." Eleanor nodded, her eyes filled with sorrow. "He made a deal with the house. He brought us here, and now we're all trapped. The house feeds on our souls, and it won't stop until it has them all. You're the last one, Isla. The last one who can set us free." The shadows around them seemed to stretch, the darkness swallowing everything in sight. "How?" Isla asked, her voice trembling. "How can I stop him?" Eleanor reached out to her, her hands cold as ice. "You have to go to the heart of the house. You have to destroy it. The basement. That's where the power lies. That's where it all began. You have to go there and destroy it before it's too late." Isla looked around, the walls now pressing in on her from all sides. "But the basement. I can't. It's too dangerous. Ethan's down there. He'll stop me." Eleanor's eyes were full of resolve. "You have no choice. If you don't, he will claim you, just like he did to the rest of us. You have to fight him, Isla. You're the only one who can." Isla swallowed hard. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. Could she really do this? Could she really face Ethan and destroy the house? The weight of the decision pressed down on her, but she knew one thing for sure: if she didn't try, she would never escape. She would be trapped here, just like Eleanor and the others. With a deep breath, she nodded. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "I'll do it. I'll stop him." The moment she spoke those words, the house seemed to shudder, the shadows swirling around her like a storm. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening, as if the house was screaming in rage. But Isla didn't back down. She turned toward the stairs, her resolve hardening. She would face Ethan. She would destroy the house. And she would survive. The house was breathing. Isla could feel it now. Every plank in the floor, every wooden beam above her head seemed to pulse with a quiet, dreadful rhythm. A heartbeat. A hunger. The house was alive, not metaphorically, not emotionally. It was a living, pulsing entity. And it wanted her. She stood frozen in the hallway for a long moment after Eleanor vanished into a shimmer of pale light, the echo of her last words still ringing in the air. "Go to the basement. That's where it all began." Isla's legs felt like jelly, her chest tight from the fear that coiled there like a viper, hissing warnings she couldn't afford to listen to. But there was no turning back. Not anymore. The door refused to open. The windows wouldn't break. Her phone no longer picked up a signal. The entire world outside felt like it had slipped away. There was only this house now and the darkness it held within. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer thankfully, still working, and slowly made her way to the basement door once again. This time, the house didn't resist her. In fact, it almost seemed to invite her. The door creaked open easily, exposing a suffocating black void at the top of the stairs. The air that escaped the basement was freezing, and something in it smelled faintly metallic like rusted iron and old blood. "Let's get this over with," Isla whispered, her breath visibly puffing in the air. Step by step, she descended. The flashlight's beam cut through the darkness like a knife through silk, but it couldn't reach far. Everything beyond its light remained maddeningly obscured, as though the shadows themselves were resisting the truth. Each stair groaned under her weight, and she could swear that for every step she took downward, something below took a step closer upward. At the bottom, the basement opened wide like a gaping maw. Boxes, old furniture, and spider webs cluttered the space, but her eyes went straight to the far wall. It was different now. The stone bricks were gone. In their place was a large wooden door that hadn't been there before. Old, blackened, etched with runes she didn't recognize. The wood was pulsating. It wasn't carved, it was grown. Veins ran beneath the surface like blood vessels. And at the center, embedded into the grain like a cancerous growth, was a keyhole. "A door within a door," she murmured. "A heart within the heart." Suddenly, a screech tore through the basement, a noise not of this world. Isla spun, shining her light back up the stairs. Ethan was there. His face had changed. No longer the weary, haunted landlord. His eyes were black, entirely devoid of whites or irises. His skin had turned sallow, mottled like rotting paper. His smile was wider now, too wide, unnatural, unhinged. "You weren't supposed to make it this far," he growled, voice gurgling as if filled with water. "But I suppose it's fitting. The house likes you." Isla backed away, flashlight trembling in her grip. "You lied to me. You lied to all of them." Ethan's voice echoed like a thunderclap. "I told you the truth, just not all of it. This house, it feeds, Isla. I just prepare the meals." She reached the door behind her, pressing her hand against the wood. It was warm. Alive. It pulsed beneath her fingers, as though waiting, wanting to be opened. "What's behind this door?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. Ethan's face twitched. He took one step down the stairs. Then another. "The origin," he said, eyes locked on hers. The first offering. The one who made the pact. If you open that door, you won't find salvation. You'll find him. She didn't know who him was, but she knew one thing: it was the only chance she had. If the power of the house started there, then maybe she could end it there. From her pocket, she pulled out the iron key she had found wedged inside Eleanor's journal days ago, a page she hadn't read until last night. It hadn't made sense then. It does now. The key to end what you started, locked away with his name, the journal had said. She slid the key into the lock. Ethan howled. No. You don't know what you're doing. She turned it. The door shuddered. The heartbeat intensified. Her flashlight flickered, then died completely, plunging the room into darkness. But the door swung open. And behind it nothing. A void. Pure, absolute, silent darkness. But as Isla peered into the black, something peered back. Two crimson eyes blinked open. Then came the voice. It was not human. It was old. Deep. Cold. It scraped across her thoughts like fingernails on wet glass. Who dares disturb my chamber? Ethan fell to his knees behind her. Master. Forgive her. She doesn't understand. But the voice didn't speak to him. It spoke to her. You have his scent, it whispered. You are marked. Isla shook her head. Marked by who? What are you? The voice laughed slow, grating, painful to hear. He made the pact to save a dying wife. One soul for another. One meal. For eternal shelter. He thought he could escape it. Foolish. Now he sends others in his place. Her knees nearly gave out. Ethan. The pact. He had once loved someone. Made a deal to keep her alive. In exchange, he would offer others. Guests. Tenants. Strangers. Isla felt the walls vibrating as if in fury. The voice spoke again. And what? He broke the pact. And you? You are the knife. Drive him in. Drive him down. Sacrifice the gatekeeper, and the house will starve. Let it starve, and the curse breaks. Isla turned. Ethan was crawling toward her now, eyes wild, mouth foaming. Don't listen to it. He screamed. You'll kill us all. But Isla had already made up her mind. She reached into the toolbox nearby and grabbed the first thing her hand found, a rusted iron spike. Heavy. Cold. Ethan screamed as she rushed him. No. I was trying to protect you. But Isla didn't stop. She swung the spike down once. Twice. On the third hit, the house screamed. It wasn't Ethan. It wasn't her. It was the walls. The floor. The ceiling. Everything roared at once as the shadows whipped violently through the room like 1,000 shrieking mouths. And then silence. The void door closed slowly, as if exhaling. The heartbeat stopped. The walls ceased their trembling. Ethan's body lay limp at the bottom of the stairs, eyes staring into nothingness. And Isla was still standing. The flashlight flickered back to life. The door to the house creaked open upstairs. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the night air flowed in. Real air. Clean. Fresh. Free. Isla took one last look at the room behind her. The door, the chamber, the horror, it was all still there. But now it slept. Powerless. Sealed once more. And as she climbed the stairs back to the living world, she whispered a single promise. Never again. Morning sunlight spilled through the cracked windows of the old house for the first time in what felt like centuries. The thick, choking darkness had lifted, and in its place was something unfamiliar to the house: silence. Not oppressive silence, not the sort that feels like something is lurking just out of view, but peaceful silence. Isla stood at the top of the stairs, staring at the open front door. The air outside shimmered golden with the dawn. Birds sang. Life pulsed beyond the gate. She could leave now. She could run. And she almost did. Almost. But something kept her rooted there, her hand still trembling slightly as it held onto the staircase's banister. Her eyes drifted back to the basement door, which now hung ajar, silent and still. Her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths as the memories flooded her. Ethan's twisted face. The pact. The creature in the void. Its voice. Its hunger. Its command. Drive him in. She had done what was asked. She had stopped Ethan. She had sealed the void. The house had gone still. So why did it still feel alive? Her body was aching, her soul frayed, but there was a deeper itch beneath her skin now, an unease that wouldn't leave. With trembling steps, Isla walked outside for the first time in days. The sun kissed her face gently, and she allowed herself to believe just for a moment that it was over. She walked until the house disappeared behind the trees, her back turned to the shadows that had held her captive. But even as she left, she felt something pulling at her consciousness. Something lingering. Watching. Waiting. 3 days later. The police found Ethan's body exactly where she said it would be, at the bottom of the basement stairs. The house was sealed as a crime scene, though no one could determine the cause of his death. The officers noted the condition of his face, the way his eyes were clouded and bloodless, his fingers gnarled like branches. A heart attack, they concluded. Stress. Isolation. No one mentioned the symbols carved into the wall behind the hidden chamber. No one saw them. Only Isla could. And even now, as she sat in a coffee shop across town, sipping a lukewarm cappuccino and pretending to scroll through her phone, she still saw them when she closed her eyes. A spiral. A triangle. An eye with no pupil. Symbols burned into her memory. That night, Isla stayed at a rented studio apartment she had found through a friend. It was modern, bland, full of neutral tones and LED lighting safe. But she still couldn't sleep. At 2:12 a.m. she awoke gasping. She didn't remember dreaming. She only remembered hearing a whisper, a scrape, a voice, too familiar now. You sealed one door, but not all of them. Her throat clenched. She sat up, eyes scanning the room. Nothing. But the air felt colder than before. The lights flickered. No, she whispered. You're gone. I ended you. No response. Just a silence that mocked her. She sat there until morning. The next day, driven by instinct or perhaps fear, Isla returned to the house. She wasn't sure why. Closure. Curiosity. Or was it something else calling her back? She stood on the sidewalk across from it, half expecting the house to be gone, or swallowed by vines. But it was there. Quiet. Intact. A crime scene tape fluttered gently in the breeze. But something was off. The door was open. No officer inside. Someone had gone inside. Isla crossed the street, pushing the tape aside. Her boots crunched on gravel as she stepped into the house once more. The air was warm. Too warm. She moved carefully, slowly, each step a risk she didn't fully understand. Dust floated in golden shafts of light, and the house groaned not in pain, but in greeting. Like it remembered her. Eleanor. She called, her voice barely above a whisper. No answer. No whispering. Only breathing. Low. Wet. Guttural. It was coming from upstairs this time. Isla's blood froze. The basement was no longer the source of terror. Something had moved. Something had climbed higher. Against every instinct screaming at her to run, Isla crept up the staircase. The groaning of the old wood beneath her feet seemed amplified now, like drums before a ritual. Halfway up, she paused. The air thickened. The second floor stretched into shadow, even though daylight still seeped through the windows downstairs. Something stood at the end of the hallway, a silhouette. Not moving. Just watching. Isla's voice cracked. Who's there? The figure took one step forward. She didn't wait to see more. She turned and bolted back down, nearly tumbling in her haste. As she reached the front door, slam. It closed on its own. Locked. Again. She spun, heart in her throat. The figure was now halfway down the stairs. Not Ethan. Not Eleanor. Someone else. A girl. No older than 16. Dressed in a tattered white nightgown, soaked at the bottom like she had been walking through water. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Her skin was ashen. Her eyes milky white. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Only black water. It poured from her lips, her eyes, her ears, flooding the staircase as if she were a broken vessel. Isla backed away. Who are you? The girl didn't answer. She only raised her arm, pointing toward the basement. No. Not the old basement. The basement door had been sealed. This was another one. A door Isla had never seen before. Where the old fireplace used to be, there was now a narrow wooden hatch set into the floor. It hadn't been there before. The girl vanished in the blink of an eye. The water disappeared. The air turned still. And the hatch creaked open. From below, Isla heard it again. Breathing. Laughing. Feeding. And the voice, the same voice she had heard in the void, but different now. Split. Multiplied. One door sealed. 6 remain. Isla's knees buckled. Her hands gripped the wall. No. No, you said it would be over. I ended it. But deep in the floorboards, the voices echoed in unison. You began it. The hatch remained open, like a yawning mouth beneath the very foundation of Isla's sanity. The air spilling out from it was thick, warm, and laced with a sweet, metallic scent like rotting roses and old blood. It was a scent she had smelled before. In her dreams. In her memories. She didn't move at first. She stood frozen, staring into the void beneath her feet. The darkness swirled, almost like it was breathing, exhaling shadows, inhaling her fear. 6 doors, the voice had said. She had opened the first. And now, the house wanted her to open the next. Isla's hand trembled as she reached for her phone, hoping the flashlight could cut through the abyss below. The screen flickered, then died. The battery had been at 70% just minutes ago. Typical. She grabbed a brass candle holder from the mantel, the only thing left in the once cozy living room, and lit the stub of a candle still stuck to it. The flame danced weakly, casting long, twitching shadows on the walls as she approached the hatch. Her mind screamed to run, to abandon this place forever. But her body moved anyway. She climbed down. The descent was tight, claustrophobic. The wooden walls of the shaft closed in around her, pressing against her shoulders. It smelled of old soil and wet stone, and the sound of dripping water echoed faintly below. After a dozen rickety steps, the ladder ended in soft earth. Isla stepped down into what looked like an underground corridor. It shouldn't have existed. There had been no signs of a tunnel system beneath the house. No blueprints, no rumors. And yet, it stretched ahead, an ancient, arched tunnel made of brick and bone white mortar, lined with flickering gas lamps that had no source of ignition. They simply burned. And they knew she was here. As she walked, the walls began to whisper. Names. Thousands of names, spoken in tongues she didn't understand. But one name kept repeating. Over and over again, until it etched itself into her spine. Illyra. She stopped. Illyra, she repeated, her breath frosting in the air. It sounded wrong in her mouth. Foreign. Sacred. And yet, familiar. Another lamp burst to life further ahead. And in its glow, she saw a mirror. Standing in the middle of the corridor, no frame, no support, just hovering. Her reflection was there. But it wasn't her. The woman in the mirror wore a black lace dress, soaked in shadow. Her hair was longer, silver, wild. Her eyes were all black, no whites, no irises. And yet, she wore Isla's face. You came back, the reflection whispered. Isla staggered backward. Who are you? The first. The source. The blood you carry. What are you talking about? The mirror cracked down the center. Blood trickled from the fracture, as though the glass itself were bleeding. You are my descendant, Isla. This house remembers blood. And you are mine. A roar echoed from deep within the corridor. The voice behind the mirror grinned. You weren't just chosen. You were called back home. Isla sprinted away. She didn't want to hear more. Couldn't hear more. But the whisper followed her. Through every twist and turn, every hallway and stairwell hidden beneath the world above. You are Illyra's child. You were born of the house. You belong to it. The The corridor finally opened into a massive chamber, a rotunda-like space with 6 ancient doors carved into the stone walls. Each one bore a different symbol. One of them, the spiral, was open. The others remained shut. For now. And in the center of the chamber, a throne of black stone. Sitting atop it was a man. But not Ethan. This one was tall, regal, wrapped in a cloak that shimmered like a galaxy collapsing into itself. His face was hidden beneath a bone-white mask with a single tear carved into it. One eye glowed red. The other was sealed with wax. He didn't move. Didn't speak. But the room trembled. Isla could feel his mind pressing against hers. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice cracking. The man raised his hand and with a slow, deliberate gesture, pointed to the second door. A symbol shaped like a broken crown shimmered on its surface. And then, the voice came not from him, but from the walls, from the stone beneath her feet, from within her own skull. Each door is a memory. Each memory, a blood debt. Unlock them all, and the truth will be yours. Or leave them sealed, and be hunted for eternity. She wanted to scream. But something within her stirred. A hunger. A pull. The door with the broken crown whispered to her. It smelled like the sea. She stepped closer. As she reached out her hand, something crashed behind her. She turned. The throne was empty. And something was running toward her fast. It wore Ethan's face. But its eyes were empty. Its mouth, filled with teeth that weren't human. Isla had no time to run. She grabbed the latch on the broken crown door and pulled. The world exploded in white. White. An endless, blinding white. When Isla opened her eyes, she wasn't in the chamber anymore. She wasn't even underground. The stone, the whispers, the creature in the throne, all gone. In their place was a vast shoreline, wrapped in a fog that pulsed like breath. The wind howled, sharp and icy, carrying the cries of something far beneath the waves. The ocean was black. The sky was gray. And she stood barefoot on damp sand that clung to her skin like fingers. Above her, hanging crooked in the sky, was a broken crown, not a symbol this time, but an actual object. Enormous. Suspended midair, turning slowly, with cracks that oozed darkness like tar. Lightning flashed within it, but made no sound. The second door had opened a memory, but not her own. Ilara's. And she was standing in the middle of it. She took a step forward. The ocean hissed. A figure stood near the water's edge, back turned to her. A woman in a long tattered gown, seaweed woven through her silver hair, arms wrapped around something small. A child. The woman turned. It was her face. But older. weary. Eyes hollowed out by sorrow. The child squirmed in her arms. No, not squirmed, shimmered. The child wasn't solid. It flickered like mist in the sunlight. A memory. Half-formed. Isla tried to speak, but her voice didn't come. The woman stared directly at her, as though seeing through time. He drowned because of me. The voice echoed through the air like it didn't belong to lungs or lips. It was truth-made sound. My son. I thought I could bargain with the tide. Behind her, the black ocean surged. Shapes twisted beneath the waves. Human-shaped. Wailing. One of them clawed its way to the surface, mouth wide, eyes filled with stars. It screamed. Isla stumbled backward. The water didn't rise, but lunged, shooting tendrils like arms, dragging the flickering child into the waves. Ilora didn't resist. She only watched. Every pact has a price. I asked for life. I gave them his. The sky cracked above her. The broken crown above began to shudder. Pieces flaked off and fell like burning snow. The scene flickered like a VHS tape with torn film. Suddenly, Isla stood in a circular room lined with candles. Ilora knelt in the center, her dress soaked, her hands trembling. The child's toy, a carved wooden gull, lay broken beside her. A voice surrounded them both. The sea accepts your debt. One child for one gift. Ilora whispered. Let my house stand. Let it feed. Let it endure. Isla's breath caught in her chest. The curse didn't begin in violence. It began in desperation. A mother who gave up her son to save everything else. The vision snapped. Darkness swallowed the room. Isla was standing in the black again, but now she was soaked. Her feet were wet. Her hands held the broken gull. A token left behind. A proof. And now, someone else was in the room. Not Ilora. A man. Wearing an ornate captain's coat, moth-eaten and slimy with sea salt. His face was a skull twisted by coral and seaweed, barnacles clinging to his jaw. One of his eyes was gone, the other glowed with sickly blue fire. He opened his mouth, and water poured out. You carry her guilt. That guilt wakes us. We remember the deal. And now, you owe. He charged. Isla turned to run, but her feet stuck to the floor like sand turning to hands. The broken gull in her hand heated up, glowing white hot. Use it, a voice whispered. The last gift of innocence. She hurled the toy. It struck the ghost captain's chest right where his heart would have been. He screamed. Light exploded from his body in a plume of white steam. The room collapsed in on itself, waves crashing inward as if the ocean itself was being sucked through a pinhole. And just like that, she was back. Back in the chamber. Back in the present. Back in front of the second door. It was sealed once more. The throne was still empty. The stone around her glowed with soft light. The broken gull lay at her feet, real now. Solid. And her palm was marked. A sigil glowing faintly. A broken crown within a spiral. 2 doors. 2 bloodlines touched. Isla stumbled backward, her breath ragged, her heart hammering. Her eyes darted to the other 4 doors. Each one hummed now, alive with distant memory and impossible pain. And then she saw it. A name carved into the floor. Her own. But beneath it, another. Ilara Voss. And beneath that, Ilara Voss, died 1899. Body never recovered. Isla collapsed to her knees. The truth was more than inheritance. It was possession. Her veins weren't cursed. They were bound. Each door she opened made the bond stronger. Not just to the house but to Ilara herself. Somewhere in the folds of space and time, the woman who began this horror waited. And with each memory unlocked, she woke. The air inside the chamber had shifted. The 6 doors still stood along the curved walls, their symbols glowing faintly with the breath of ancient memory. The first spiral sealed. The second broken crown still warm from the vision of Ilara and her drowned son. But now, Isla's eyes were drawn to the third. Its mark was unlike the others, a set of clock hands, crossing at an unnatural angle, pointing neither to any known time nor direction. The moment Isla stepped toward it, the air turned heavy. Not oppressive like before, but timeless. Like every second she moved forward stretched into a lifetime. Her fingertips brushed the metal. It didn't open like the others. Instead, it ticked. Once. Twice. Then the world shattered into silence. She was standing in a workshop. Brass gears the size of wagon wheels lined the walls. Dozens of clocks, all identical, ticked out of sync. Outside the arched windows, a violet sky twisted slowly, and a storm of ink-black snow fell upward into the heavens. A woman sat at a workbench. Slender hands moved with inhuman precision as she adjusted a pocket watch, her silver tools gleaming with strange runes. She wore an apron stained with oil, and her braid was tied with a crimson ribbon. At her feet, a girl maybe 7 played with a toy music box, winding it over and over. The melody was familiar. Too familiar. Isla knew it. It was the lullaby that had haunted her dreams as a child. The woman turned. It was Isla's face again, but with eyes made entirely of gold clockwork. She smiled. Do you want to know how we kept time still? Isla took a step back. The gears on the walls whirred. The floor beneath her hummed. What is this place? She asked. The third memory. My name is Lai Sen. The one who froze time to stop death. Isla's breath caught. Another ancestor. Another key in the bloodline. The girl on the floor tugged at Lai Sen's sleeve. Mama, the man outside is waiting. Lai Sen's smile faded. She put down the watch and rose to her feet. It's time then. She crossed the room and opened a chest in the corner. Inside was a heart-shaped mechanism, still beating. She handed it to Isla. Take this. When the door opens, the house will try to use me. Tell it no. The girl stood now too. But her eyes. Her eyes were missing. Two clock hands jutted from the sockets, turning slowly, ticking in reverse. Lai Sen kissed her forehead. And the room fractured. Now Isla stood in a vast hall of mirrors, each one ticking. Each one showing a version of herself, some old, some young, some bloodied, some smiling. One of them wore the same crimson ribbon as Lai Sen. The ticking rose to a scream. She covered her ears. But the mirrors cracked. And from them crawled shadows, dozens of them wearing her face but laughing in different tongues. You are many. You are all. You are the end of her line. You are the beginning of the next. They lunged. Isla ran. She burst through a brass archway and found herself on a clock tower's ledge. The tower overlooked nothing. Just the void. Lai Sen stood on the edge, hair billowing. You came back, she said, looking over her shoulder. You've seen her, haven't you? Illara. Isla nodded. She's waking. We never stopped her. We just slowed her. Lai Sen turned, revealing her chest, a hollow cavity, where the heart-shaped mechanism should have been. Place it, and I will give you the last second. The last. Lai Sen took Isla's hand, gently guiding the mechanical heart back into her chest. It locked with a hiss. Her eyes closed. The ticking stopped. And in that instant, the mirrors shattered behind Isla. The shadows dissolved. A gust of light blew outward from the clock tower, and Isla felt something anchor inside her. She now carried Lai Sen's last second. A time that had been frozen for centuries. And as the door behind her reappeared and swung open, the tower collapsed behind her, gone, as if it had never existed. Back in the chamber, she fell to her knees. A new sigil burned on her forearm, clock hands crossed. 3 doors now sealed. 3 memories absorbed. 3 truths buried no longer. But Isla was shaking. Because she could now hear the ticking in her own chest. Faint. But real. And from the 4th door, marked with a burning eye, came a soft sound. Not a whisper. Not a growl. But a child's voice, repeating something over and over. A name. Not hers. Not Ilira. Not Lysen. But one Isla had never heard before. Nolan. The name echoed in the chamber like a prayer spoken in reverse. Nolan. Soft. Gentle. A child's voice. But behind it sorrow. Deep and ancient. Isla stood frozen before the 4th door. Its symbol of burning eye pulsed like a heartbeat. She didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to hear that voice again. But her feet moved. Drawn. Compelled. As her hand reached forward, the sigil flared and the world unraveled once more. This time, the memory did not take her to a room, or a tower, or a shoreline. It dropped her in the middle of a forest on fire. The trees around her were burning, but the flames didn't consume. They clung to the bark like parasites, dripping upward into the canopy. Ash swirled, but never fell. The ground was moss and glass. And in the center of it all, a boy stood barefoot, no older than 10. He stared directly at her. Eyes pure white. You finally came. His voice wasn't angry. Just tired. He held a tattered stuffed rabbit in one hand. Its eyes had been ripped off and replaced with tiny mirrors. Its ears were stitched with runes Isla couldn't read, but recognized from the basement chamber. Runes of containment. Are you Nolan? She asked. The boy nodded once. I was born in the house. I died before I could leave. Thunder rumbled in the burning trees. Isla stepped closer. Why are you locked behind a door? Nolan looked down. Because I saw too much. Because I remembered too clearly. He turned and pointed to a clearing beyond the trees. A great stone circle awaited there, glowing faintly beneath the ash-flecked sky. As Isla followed, she saw etchings on each stone. Names. None were hers. But one stood out. Nolan Voss. 1913. Etched beneath it, sealed. Unclaimed. Unremembered. Isla touched the stone. It was warm. A vision flashed before her eyes. A memory not her own, but shared. A woman screams. Ilira, again. Younger. Desperate. A child, Nolan wails, standing in the middle of a ritual circle drawn in salt and bone. 6 hooded figures chant around him. One of them, a man with no face, raises a dagger carved from obsidian. He must be erased, a voice growls. He carries the door in his soul. Ilaro lunges forward. She's too late. The dagger pierces the boy's chest, not to kill, but to silence. He doesn't bleed. He shatters. Like glass. His body breaks into shards of memory, spiraling outward, and each fragment is locked into a door. Including this one. Back in the present, Isla recoiled from the stone. Nolan was still there. Still watching. But his eyes were crying now. They didn't kill me. They made me forget myself. The stuffed rabbit in his arms began to twitch. Its mouth opened. And from it came the voices of all the ancestors Isla had seen. Ilara. Lysen. The captain. Even the girl with black water eyes. You are the vessel. You carry our sins, but also our salvation. Unlock Nolan, or remain incomplete. Isla fell to her knees. How? What do I do? Nolan stepped forward and gently placed the rabbit into her hands. Its fur turned warm. Its mirrors reflected not her face but her soul. Then he whispered, "Remember me." The forest exploded. Flames turned to wings. Ash turned to feathers. And the world spun backward. Isla gasped, awake in the chamber. But something was different. Her hand was clenched tight around something soft. The stuffed rabbit. Still warm. Still stitched with runes. And on her palm, a new sigil, a burning eye now wide open. The door behind her sealed itself with a hiss. And this time, a wind blew through the chamber. It was impossible. They were underground. But the wind was carrying whispers. Whispers of Nolan's name. And with it came something else. From the 5th door, marked with a black sun-dripped ink. Thick. Alive. Crawling toward her shoes like it wanted to climb into her veins. Isla backed away, shaking. She had unlocked 4 doors. Each one deeper than the last. Each one more herself. And now, the house knew it. And it was waking up. The ink kept moving. Thick, oily trails crawled out from the base of the 5th door, slithering like veins across the floor. They coiled around Isla's feet but didn't burn. Instead, they pulsed as if tasting her. She wanted to run. She wanted to turn back. But the rabbit in her arms warmed. He remembers now. Nolan's voice, faint but resolute, whispered from somewhere deep in her spine. "You're close, Isla. Only 2 doors left." The 5th door loomed tall and silent, marked with a black sun etched so deeply it seemed to devour the stone itself. The ink bled from its center like tears from a blind god. It did not shimmer. It did not hum. It absorbed everything: light, sound, even thought. When she touched it, nothing happened. Not at first. No blinding flash. No swirl of vision. Just void. And then, Isla found herself standing in a cathedral of shadows. The air was sharp, metallic. The walls were impossibly tall, reaching into a sky filled with dead stars. Great stained glass windows surrounded her, each depicting scenes too terrible to belong in any holy place. A woman screaming as her own reflection climbed out of a mirror to strangle her. A child holding the sun in its hands, slowly burning alive. A man with no face placing candles into a skull-shaped cradle. And in the center of the cathedral, an altar. Upon it, chained with silver and silence, was a heart made of obsidian. It pulsed once. And the world screamed. Isla fell to her knees, clutching her head. The sound wasn't in her ears, it was in her blood. In every atom of her being. A cry from a time before language. "Do not awaken it," a voice hissed behind her. She spun around. A tall figure stood at the base of the altar. Robed in robes stitched from human shadows, its face hidden beneath a sun-shaped mask carved from coal. Its eyes, if it had them, glowed faintly red behind the cracks. "You've gone too far, Isla boss. You carry the keys. But you don't understand the locks." She rose to her feet, voice hoarse. "What is this place?" "This is the 5th seal. The womb of the house. Before Illyra, before Lysen, before Nolan, there was it. It." The robed figure raised an arm, pointing to the heart. "The black sun." Isla's stomach twisted. "It's alive." The mask tilted. "It never lived. It only remembered. It holds the memory of everything the house devoured. Every life taken, every sin hidden. And it has one hunger left. Me." The figure didn't deny it. "You are the last. The final heir. The line ends with you. Then I'll end the curse." "You don't end curses. You inherit them." The heart beat again. Isla took a step toward it. The shadows screamed. The stained glass cracked. And the altar opened. From within spilled names written in tongues, inked in ash, weeping like wounds. She saw her mother's name. Her grandmother's. And beneath them, her own. And next to it, carved in fresh, wet stone. Recipient. No, she gasped. It's not asking you. The figure stepped aside. It's already taken you. Suddenly, the walls of the cathedral peeled away, revealing a field of graves stretching into forever. Each tombstone bore a variation of her name. Isla Voss, never born. Isla Voss, buried alive. Isla Voss, chose silence. She ran. But the graves kept going. Hundreds. Thousands. Then she saw one that froze her in place. Isla Voss, accepted the sun. The dirt beneath it cracked. A hand shot out. Her own hand. But blackened, rotting, mirrored. It grabbed her ankle. And yanked. She was drowning in ink. It filled her mouth, her lungs, her eyes. But in the darkness, she saw a vision. A girl. Not her. Wearing white. Standing beneath the real sun, one not yet blackened. Singing. And behind her a shadow watching. Waiting. That girl was the first. The very first to set foot in the house. Not Ilira. Someone older. More ancient. The origin of the bloodline. She turned. Her eyes were glowing suns. And she whispered, "Wake me, and the world ends." Isla shot up, coughing ink, back in the chamber. The rabbit was gone. Replaced by the obsidian heart, now resting silently at her side. She couldn't move. The weight of it was unbearable. Her skin burned with the fifth sigil now seared across her back, a black sun with dripping rays. And the sixth door. It had changed. Its symbol was now her face. Not etched. Carved. Screaming. The last door did not open. It breathed. Isla stood before it, knees weak, ink still drying on her back where the fifth sigil had been burned. The chamber around her no longer felt like stone, it pulsed like flesh, warm and wet, as if the house itself had become a living thing. The sixth door bore her face. Not a drawing. Not a carving. But a mirror, etched in agony. And it was screaming. Not from fear, but from recognition. Isla reached out. And the mirror swallowed her. She awoke in a place where time had never existed. A void of shifting lights and voices, layered over each other in infinite, whispering loops. Here, Isla was not Isla. She was everyone. And no one. She walked across a floor of stardust, beneath a sky made of eyes, each one watching, blinking slowly, with no lids. Her breath turned into runes. Her heartbeat made constellations. In the distance, she saw a cradle. Wooden. Floating in midair. Inside it lay a child. Wrapped in silks of shadow. She stepped closer and gasped. The child was her. But newborn. Unmarked. Unnamed. And behind the cradle, sitting on a throne of bone and time, was the first mother. Not Elora. Not Lysen. Not Nolan. But a woman made of memory itself. Her hair was a stream of images. Her skin was parchment. Her voice. You finally made it? Isla choked. Who are you? The woman smiled. I am the one who birthed the house. Why? To hold memory. To trap it. To keep the sins of the world from spilling over. And the children. Each generation is a new lock. A new key. A new chance to end it. But none did. They feared truth. They feared freedom. Isla stepped forward, eyes blazing. I'm not afraid. No. You're angry. And that is different. She pointed to the baby in the cradle. This is the last self. The clean one. You can place your soul in it. Begin again. End the line. No memory. No house. Isla stared. A clean slate. A life without the house. No shadows. No doors. But something inside her rebelled. And if I don't? The first mother tilted her head. Then the house remains. You wake it. And become it. Isla's thoughts raced. Could she abandon everything? Was it right to erase it all? Then, a voice. Nolan's. Don't forget us. Then Elora. We lived. We mattered. Then Lysen. You're not a reset. You're a reckoning. Isla turned away from the cradle. Faced the first mother. I won't run. I won't forget. She reached deep into her chest, into the wound left by the black sun, and tore out her own name. The sigils on her skin erupted in flame. And then she screamed. Not in pain. In power. Each door she had opened reappeared, floating in a circle around her. She turned to them. One by one, she called the names of those trapped within. Elora. Lysen. Nolan. The captain. The girl of ice. The timekeeper. Their faces appeared in light, hovering, watching. And with one final breath, she opened all the doors at once. The house howled. Reality buckled. The black sun shattered. The ink evaporated. And the chamber caved in. She awoke in a field of lilies. Real ones. The morning sun was warm. Birdsong. No sigils on her skin. No doors. Just peace. At her side, buried halfway in the grass, was the stuffed rabbit. Its eyes now blank. Its runes faded. She picked it up, smiled, and walked. Epilogue. Years later, in a small cottage by the sea, Isla kept a journal. She filled it with names, with stories, with memories. Not to trap them, but to remember. Because she had learned, forgetting is not freedom. Memory is the key. And for the first time in generations, the house was quiet. Blue Book title: The House of Six Doors. Or alternative, more poetic, Echoes Beyond the Doors. Memo description, 500 plus characters, SEO friendly, YouTube/audiobook ready. When Isla Voss inherits her family's forgotten estate, she discovers a hidden chamber containing 6 ancient doors, each marked with a cryptic symbol and soaked in blood-soaked memory. One by one, she unlocks the ancestral horrors sealed behind them: drowning ghosts, frozen timekeepers, mirror dwellers, and a boy erased from history. But when the 5th door bleeds ink and the 6th bears her own face, Isla realizes she is not just an heir. She is the final vessel in a cycle of memory, madness, and sacrifice. Dive into a gripping dark fantasy mystery where every door reveals a piece of truth, and only by remembering the forgotten can Isla break the curse and reclaim her soul. Perfect for fans of The Haunting of Hill House, Silent Hill, and dark gothic stories steeped in emotion, symbols, and ancestral dread.